Narcissists have several advantages on you and me. Their lack of empathy gives them a massive strength. It allows them to take on it allows them to really experience people in a very different way. In a way, I think that makes it hard for you and I to really understand what that would be like. In some ways, I know that their core is that at the core they're miserable people, but I also think at the same time there's a freedom that they have from public opinion that you and I just would struggle to understand. It's not something that you and I would experience very well because that's not the way you and I would see the world. Hey Kim, so good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm thrilled that you're here. And for those of you who are new to me, I'm thrilled that you're joining, and we're going to be talking about narcissistic tactics, why they have such a strong advantage of being able to wrap you and I up into the most horrific upsetness. They can get you. I felt like I always went from 0 to 100 in their ability to stir me up and really shake me. So I want to talk about why they're so successful at that. What advantage do they have? Why are they so good at flipping the script, shifting the blame to you, making you doubt yourself, making you think that maybe you're actually the problem? Why are they so good at making you care more about what you think about them than what they actually think about you? So I'd love to get into that today, about talking about the way they make us lose control, get under our skin, and make us feel absolutely crazy. So I thank you so much for joining me. For those of you who are new to my platform, I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy, and I'm a retired psychologist with over 20 years of counseling experience. I have both counseled narcissists in the office as a practitioner, as a clinician, but I've also, unfortunately, have had the hardship of having to live around narcissists and other types of toxic people. I'm convinced that my grandmother had psychopathic tendencies. She was a cold, ruthless woman, a real brutal woman. So, and then my father wasn't the epitome of stability either. I think he had some interesting mixed personality traits that made him a very intriguing person. So, and then I got married to I'm convinced that of course, he's not been diagnosed, but a narcissistic sociopath. So it's been an intriguing ride. For those of you who are not familiar with my story, I actually wrote about the horrific experience that I had called Love You More. And in it, you get to see how me as a victim gets stuck, how I get entrenched, and the very thing I want to talk about today, how I get stirred up and then struggle to get out. I struggle to stop caring about his opinion, about the way he views me. So I really want to talk about that. Why does that matter? And I think one of the key pieces is that they lack empathy. I mean, have you ever thought about what that actually means, not to have empathy? So it not only does it mean that it's difficult to relate to another person, to really understand how, if I don't have empathy for you, then if I step on your toe, it's really makes it a struggle for me to have any care about how that impacts you. In fact, I will feel kind of flat about it. So I did that. So what? To me, it would be no big deal. It would also mean I'd have a hard time feeling feelings, understanding what your pain would be, or understanding what it would be like to have someone who's standing on your toe. I would struggle to relate to that. So the understanding how it would feel, that's called uh, affective impact or empathy, and then the being able to relate to having someone stand on your toe, that would be called cognitive empathy. I'd struggle to have that. So imagine that I didn't see that and I didn't really care. And the other interesting thing about narcissists and psychopaths, sociopaths, is their ability to read faces, and particularly negative emotions. Particularly psychopaths and sociopaths, there's been some research that shows that they struggle to read other people's emotions, particularly negative emotions. So that means if you're upset with me and that you have anger or distress, it wouldn't particularly impact me. I would kind of over overlook that. It wouldn't matter a whole lot to me. So here I'm basically saying is I'm impacting you. I don't have any sensitivity about how I'm impacting you or how that's affecting you. So that means then I don't really care that I'm impacting you or affecting you if I'm not empathic, because I don't recognize your pain. So that actually would give me a tremendous amount of freedom to sort of charge through life and do things based upon what I want to do, not based upon what's socially acceptable, based upon what's happening in the whole. I mean, what's happening between you and I don't really care about that. Now, the part that I find super intriguing is this: how narcissistic people get so good at picking individuals who care more about the health of the relationship than they do. I mean, think about that. All the effort that you're expending to keep this relationship healthy, how much investment you've put in, how much time you think about this other individual, the degree that you're here probably because you want to understand it better. And if you're in a relationship, maybe if you're out of a relationship, you're wanting to heal. But if you're in a relationship, you may be very preoccupied with why aren't they working as hard as I am? What can I do to be able to save our marriage, save the family? You probably spent, like I did, I read a lot of books, I watched a lot of videos, I got involved with other groups of people. I did all this, I got into therapy, I did all this work trying to preserve the relationship. And interestingly enough, they don't particularly seem to be very concerned. How many of us have heard them say to us, you can take it or leave it? Take me or leave me as I am, because this is who I am. I know that's certainly something I heard. I heard that a lot of times, is that I had to accept that this person had serious limitations and serious handicaps, and that this was just the way things were going to be in this relationship. So it ended up making me, what I did is I threw more and more of myself into the relationship. In fact, I heard this quote that really disturbed me, and yet I knew it was true. And it came out of, I think it came out of Dr. David Schnarf's work. He wrote the book called The Passionate Marriage. And he said in that book, the person who is invested the most has the least power and control. Oh, when I heard that, I was devastated, because I knew that that was me. That because I was the one putting all the work in and doing all the effort and all the investment, that also meant that I was vulnerable and exposed to this person's lack of connection, lack of empathy with me, that they really didn't care about how they impacted me, that they cared to the degree that, they were very good at getting me back in line, but they didn't care to the degree that they were upset over my upsetness, that my pain and my misery and my distress didn't impact them, didn't affect them. So I want to talk about that today. I'm so thrilled that you're joining me. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I'm a retired psychologist. Like I said earlier, I've counseled for over 20 years. I had actually a narcissist in the office, and you're going to ask, I'm sure for some of you, like, why did they come in for therapy? It was only a few. If you consider the number of people I saw, the percentage that were narcissistic was extremely small. And usually that the group that came in was that they were there because something was going really wrong in their life and they were distressed about it. Like one of them was at jeopardy of losing his job. He had a high ranking, a very significant position in his company. He was an owner, and they were threatening to cut him out and not be a part of that partnership. And so that's why they get invested in therapy. It's usually to save themselves. That's the bottom line. Sometimes they would come in when a relationship was ending, and usually I knew it was very manipulative, because the question would be, what do I do to get this person back in my life? And then what I would ask them some questions about, why is this person not in your life? Oh, well, it's not about them. It's about this other. They just want to know, they wanted me basically to help them get better at manipulation, which I wouldn't sign up to do that. And so I usually never saw them again. They usually, immediately left, because I wasn't playing along. So narcissists are very, very hard to get in the office. And the other thing is, and this is one thing that happens with, this is a side piece that kind of, one of my little pet peeves is that people think that therapy is magic. That if we can get somebody to go to therapy, then we can change that person and then life will get better. No, therapy is not magic. You have to work at therapy. And there's nothing I'm going to say that somehow is going to more profoundly change this person into a new direction, or like give them some big insight. They're going to like, oh, That's revolutionary. Wow, that changes everything. That just doesn't happen. For therapy to work, you have to look at yourself, see what it is that you're doing, make insights into yourself, and then do the hard work of being different outside between the sessions. And as we all know, narcissists are terribly good at putting off accountability and responsibility. They don't like to look at themselves. They tend to externalize. Have you guys heard that? The difference between internalization and externalization? You know, all of us tend to err in one direction than the other. We are by nature either an externalizer or an internalizer. Hey, so good to see you, Meryl, and so good to see you, Kamish. And Maria, I'm thrilled that you're here. So yeah, but narcissists are very much externalizers, which means that they see the problem is coming from outside of them. So a great example is when you go in and you get a bad grade on a test, an externalizer would say, well, the teacher asked the wrong question. She didn't teach that material. Or they would say, you know, the classroom was really loud and I couldn't focus. Or they might say, my mom had too many chores for me last night and I couldn't study like I was supposed to. They would put the onus, the burden on the outside, not on the inside, where an externalizer would say, shoot, I should have spent more time ahead. I shouldn't have waited to the last minute to study, or I should have gotten more sleep last night. They would look at the things that they did that would set up that situation so that they would change it. So when you're an externalizer, if you think about it, and like I said, we all tend to fall in one camp or another. And just because you're an externalizer, please hear me, that does not make you a narcissist. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying narcissists tend to be more likely to be externalizers, but all of us either are in one camp or the other, and there are inherent cons and pros to each camp. But if you're externalizer, then you're going to struggle with not feeling like you're a victim. You're going to really struggle doing what you can do to change the circumstances because you tend to see it as outside of yourself. Well, that describes a lot of the narcissists as a result of that. So that's why. Oh, Brenda Williams, it's so good to see you. I'm super excited. By the way, Brenda was reminding me by seeing her that Lisa Sunny and I, you guys are familiar with Stronger Than Before, Lisa Sunny, an amazing creator, just a dear friend of mine. Her and I are doing a group coaching, a 12-week group coaching called Healing Strong. The first group is filled. We filled up, but we are now having openings for the second group, which starts April 18th. It goes for 12 weeks, and it covers all the areas that hit abuse survivors after they get out of this relationship. So when you struggle with the guilt, you know, like, did I do all the right things? And did I make the right decision? Or why did I stay? You know, all these things that we wonder about that just plague us. Or you struggle with, you know, I still love the person, but I know I shouldn't love that person, but I have good memories, but I know they did really crappy things to us. Or another one for me was a lot of the shame. Like, how could I let that happen? What's wrong with me? Am I that needy of a person that I couldn't set the kind of boundaries that I knew that I wanted to set? So if you're struggling with healing, and if you'd like to even know, maybe you're on track. I have a free assessment called how am I healing or just coping after narcissistic abuse? It's in the link in my bio. So if you go check that out, you can actually take it. It's for free. And then the results will give you information about it, but it also then give you more information about the group coaching. Someone asked, how much does it cost? It costs $799 for the 12 weeks. If you break that out, that's actually like about 60, I haven't broken it out. I think it's like $65 a session, which if you think about it, that's cheaper than a therapy session, cheaper than a coaching session, and it's over 12 weeks. So you can break up the payments over time. So Brenda is one of the participants. I'm thrilled that she's going to be in that group. Thank you so much for being here. And I would love to see you be a part of it. I did this in the fall, and the women and it's for men and women, but the people who went through it were just, they couldn't say enough good things about it. And because what I do is I approach it a lot like therapy. You know, I give you a lot of things to think about, a lot of homework, a lot of reflective questions, and you're building community. So you're getting to know these other people, which is really, really cool. So, yeah, I'm just really thrilled about it. And if you don't know, some of you said, well, that's a little more than I can spend then please consider becoming part of the Toxic Free Relationship Club. I don't know if you guys know that, but I have a membership where we meet weekly. I actually meet weekly, ongoing throughout the year. So 4 times a month, and you get that for $75 a month. You get weekly meetings. Some people see that as in place of therapy. Other people do it like they've done therapy and they want something different. But it also has a group component, like they get to know each other and build community and get the support with each other. It gives you all the access to a lot of my sources that are not free, but they're free to my club members. We read a book together. Tonight, we're going to be discussing The Gifts of Imperfection. So I'm super excited about that because that book with Brene Brown was really, really amazing. So I have, for those of you who's like, well, that 12-week group session, maybe I could use it, but it's a little more than I could afford. Well, look at the rest of what I offer. And I think you'll find that there's something probably you can afford. And for those of you who would really like to take it up to a big notch, consider coming to the retreat this fall. I actually have one. Hey, Leslie. Leslie was one of the retreat members that just went to the February one. I have one for men in September, and I have one for women in October. They're going to be different. The men's will focus on men's issues, which for men, I would love to have the men in the audience talk to me, but the things that I hear you guys say is that you feel blindsided, that you thought you'd met an amazing woman only to have this person flip on you in a shocking way that was dehumanizing for one, but also very emasculating, and that and it's hard because men don't really know how to talk well to each other and get support, and there's not really like the spaces to do that. So that makes it like, how do you say that I was in a relationship with a woman who really hurt me? I mean, I know, even me saying that, I could see how, I'm not a man, and I can see how hard that would be. It would be really, really hard. So we're going to have a small group of men, 20 men, come together, and we're going to do things that help you rebuild trust, regain your power, help you to understand what happened so that you know why you got blindsided, so you learn how to spot the red flags in a different way. What we don't equip men. That's the bottom line. I raised boys. I'm a mom of 3 sons. They're all adults. And I worked hard to equip my sons to be able to talk about feelings. But I know that that's not normal. I know that my home was very different, that we were allowed men, empowered men, to be able to share how they feel, to share that part of themselves with each other and with me. So I'm going to help create the safe spot for you to be able to do that with men. Then the women's group, we're going to be working on building confidence in yourself so that you feel more confident in the world. One of the things that really happens in narcissistically abusive relationships is that it just devastates how you carry yourself through the world. You just feel less than. I don't know about you. I know for me, it left me with these like hooks, these barbs in my psyche that it created. In fact, I heard Dr. Ramani say this. Anybody who survives a toxic relationship has permanent imposter syndrome. It just becomes a struggle to begin to how to really be able to move forward in a way that you feel confident and carry yourself and know that because they can't do anything right. They just are so good at really just pulverizing you and making you feel super, super sensitive. And maybe you think, oh, if I just do better self-talk, yeah, that helps. But there's also ways in which it almost becomes like a wound, like you walk with a limp. That's the best way I can think about it. It actually creates like an invisible handicap that you don't know that you're carrying into the world, and that it impacts you when you try to relate to other people. I see it with myself right now, that there's something I'm going through right now that somebody approaches me in a certain way and says it in a certain kind of a tone or in a certain kind of a phrase. I immediately think, oh, they're not going to like me, and I'm going to be out, and things are going to be really bad. And I know that this person does not mean that in the least, and yet I'm reacting because of this woundedness that I had because of this history. So if you'd like to learn what yours is and learn how to expunge it, to become more confident, please come to the retreat in October called Strong and Unstoppable. And the retreat for men is called Unleash Your Potential. I'd love to see you guys there. It would be really, really amazing. So yeah, we've been talking, somebody asked earlier, what's the topic for today? Oh, thank you so much, guys. The topic today is narcissistic tactics. why they get so good at twisting things and avoiding this thing. And I'm going to tell you what it is, and then we can talk about it. So I'm going to jump to the punchline for those of you like, well, what is it? Why is it? It's because they know how to tap into, better than most of us. They are very good. They're masterful at tapping into your psychological innate needs of belonging and acceptance and need for love and connection, and they weaponize it against you. There it is. That's the key. Now, some of us would say, well, then just cease to be vulnerable that way. Just stop needing people. Stop being tender. Stop wanting connection. Stop looking for belonging. But you know what happens when you do that? Well, then you're not human. You've become a robot. And how can that be healthy? If you think about it, in fact, this is why I'm so excited to talk about with my club, my membership in a couple hours, the gifts of imperfection. One of the things that Brene Brown speaks right out the top of her book is that when she looked at the happiest people in the world who lived what she calls wholeheartedly, they're not afraid of vulnerability and they don't avoid shame. Think about that. They're not walking around saying, I can't be in touch with my feelings. I can't let anybody know my vulnerabilities. I've got to be super mindful that I'm never at risk. I'm never exposed, because the minute I can't feel negative feelings. I need to avoid anything that's going to be sad or angry or anything. When the minute you do that, you've really shut down your humanity, and you've really shut down your potential to experience all emotions. Because if you say, I'm not going to let people bug me, I'm not going to be upset. I'm going to learn how to approach conflict differently so that nobody can ever shake me because I don't care. Well, then you're going to cease to have all the positive emotions too, because you can't just cut off some of them. You can't just say, I'm not going to allow frustration or irritation, or I'm not going to let people make me angry. I'm not going to get angry anymore. Well, then you've also cut off at the same time pleasure, delight, joy, happiness, contentment, satisfaction. All of those go with it. They're all part and parcel of being a human being. And we need to have all of these experiences for us to be able to be a full person. So then what's the trick? Because if they're better, because the truth of the matter is, no matter how good you try to get, you haven't spent a lifetime reading people the way they have. If you think about it, and I know I've said this before, they're highly manipulative people who see the world as at war. So imagine that you were born in the Starship Trooper kind of world, sort of. There's a new game out my sons are playing. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but it's based on that movie where it's really all, combat. We're in this, we're going to beat the enemies and they're going to kill us. If your world is like that, then you're going to approach it as everybody potentially may not have your back, could fail on you, and that there's only that you're going to have the scarcity mindset. You're going to think there's only so many resources out there. So I need to then, really watch what I have. I got to hold on what I have. I got to pursue this all the time because people are not safe. Well, then as a result of that, then you're going to then become exploitive. You're going to be manipulative. You're going to be a very competitive person. You're going to be jealous and covet other people's stuff. You're going to feel like you have to hold on and protect and hide. It's going to get easier to lie and deceive because you don't dare have any exposure. That's the mindset of people who have an antagonistic worldview. That's their mindset. But most of us, thank goodness, are born with more of a collaborative mindset. I like to think of it as this way. To me, it's like we're on the baseball team and everybody's on the same team. We just hold different positions. So instead of 9 people on the field, instead of 7 or 9, you can showing my ignorance about baseball. But instead of that number, we're all on the field and we all have a different position and we all get along and there's enough for everybody. And when you have that mindset, then you collaborative, and then you are more you cooperate with people and you can trust people because you know that they're playing on the same. They have your back because they're playing on the same team as you. So it really changes your mindset depending on how you perceive the world. What happens is that when you get a collaborative person who gets into a relationship with an antagonistic person, we each think that the rules that apply to our world is the rules that apply to the world. So the antagonistic person thinks that you're competing with them. Even if you say I do, and you made a vow to love and protect and to, till death do you part, they still don't see you as on the same team. They still see that you're out to get what you can first and the most, which is why they treat you the way that they do. It's why they hide from you. It's why they don't trust you. It's why everything is secretive with you, and why they, whenever there's an argument, they think that you're trying to harm them. And when you're crying, it must be for exploitation, because they only allow their emotions to be exposed when they want something from you. So they end up like doing all of that, thinking that this very same thing about you. But yet if you're cooperatively seeing the world, then you assume that they want the best for both of you. You assume they're working to make the relationship work. You assume that they have your back and they care about you, and that when you're upset that they want to comfort you, that they should want to do that. The problem is that they don't. So there's where, like I said earlier, that comment that Dr. Snarf said, the one who is the greatest investment in the relationship, and that would be the cooperative person, because a cooperative person tends to see the world in a team-like way, is the one with the least power, and is the one who's also the least, that has the most to lose. So when you go in there cooperatively, then you have the least power and you have the most to lose. So here's some suggestions before I turn it over to take your questions today, because I know a lot of you have been talking to each other, but also talking to me. So I'm going to stop here in a second and start talking to you about your issues. But here's some thoughts about how to deal with this if I've described your situation. And by the way, for those of you in the places where you can like and follow or share, please do that so we can get the audience up a little bit to get increased membership or increased participation. That would be awesome. Thank you so much for that. So what I would recommend that you do is recognize that you're in a relationship with somebody who has an antagonistic worldview, that they view the world as at war, and that they don't trust anyone. And once you do that, realize that they don't view you as part of their team. And that not that you can want that. You can want them to see you as that. And you can want them to be on your team. But recognizing that that is not a dynamic that describes your relationship will give you a huge advantage to how to protect yourself better and differently. Because then it starts to mean you start to evaluate what you share and why you're sharing what you're sharing. I know that I way overshared, thinking that if I shared enough, or if I was exposed enough or vulnerable enough, that somehow this person would love me more, that they would care about what I care about, that I would somehow connect with them at an emotional level, and that things would get better. The problem is it didn't and doesn't work. Because if you think about this, if you really believe, if you truly at your heart of hearts believed, let's say you believe the world is round and not flat. What can I do to convince you the world is flat? Nothing. Because you will tell me all the ways that you have proved that it's flat, that it's round, that you know without beyond a shadow of the doubt, because you've seen the evidence in your life to how it's round. Well, people who are narcissistic and have a narcissistic worldview, to them, the world has been dangerous. They will fight you to the nth to prove why and how they've had to be that protective. For them, the world's been that dangerous. They won't believe you that the world is actually not dangerous. And unfortunately, here's the sad part. The way in which they work with the world and they interact with it, it becomes self-fulfilling prophecy. So if I think the world's dangerous and I have a scarcity mindset and I become competitive and I start to fight with you over position and who's top dog, and I start to not trust you with whatever that you're going to think about me, then I get really edgy. Well, then when you start to get edgy back with me and then wow, I can't trust them, and then behave in a way that suggests that that we don't have that connection, you've just confirmed my bias. I have created a scenario that then you've confirmed because of the way I've behaved with you. And I made it come true. So then, to me, the world is very dangerous because you acted dangerously towards me. And you'll say, well, I only did that because you're doing it first. Well, they don't see themselves that way. They don't see themselves as the instrument of creating a dangerous world. They don't see that. So that's the problem here, is that it becomes very, very difficult to get out of this because of the way that they set things up. And that's one other reason why therapy fails. You have to be open to other mindsets and open to other world frames. And unfortunately, when you're in a world frame where you think you're fighting for your life, you're not very open to any other possible alternatives. It becomes extremely rigid. Yeah, he never believes me. Exactly. He won't believe you. Because in his mind, and I'm not picking on men in particular, I'm picking, your partner really believes their point of view, like religiously believes their point of view. So it comes back to, if you're in a relationship with somebody with this mindset, by understanding the fact that that's the way they see the world, will help you then to become emotionally detached from how they define you. That was my toughest thing, was becoming emotionally detached from how I was seen. That means when my partner saw me as less than outgoing, less than like supportive, less than loving, when he saw me as not trustworthy, I realized that really wasn't true about me. And I didn't need to let it affect me. I didn't let it need to give so much power over me. Because, real vulnerability is with people who are safe, and that you can work things through and talk them through. And I knew I didn't have that with this person. As much as I wanted it, as much as I worked so hard for it, you can't make something that's not there. So by me changing that perspective, it gave me the ability then to not let this person's their worldview have such a profound impact over me, so that I felt like paralyzed by it. There's really actually the secret about how to get out of it, is to begin to see it that way. All right, so now I'm going to take your questions. I'm going to stop and introduce myself again, and now I can actually see everything. I'm Dr. Kerry Kerr McAvoy. It's so great to be here with you guys again. I'm a retired psychologist. I have over 20 years of counseling experience. I'm also a writer. I have 2 books, by the way, or 3 books that are related to the topic. All 3 are available in TikTok Shop. So if you're looking for something, if you're looking for to help you figure out why you don't really want that, why you can't see clearly, why they don't love you, why you keep getting confused in your head, please. First step to leaving a narcissist will help you gain clarity so that you can make the next best right decision. Thriving to Surviving, or Surviving to Thriving, is a book that Lisa Sunny and I wrote together. And this book is a workbook that helps you walk through the emotions that you're struggling when you're trying to heal after a toxic relationship. Oh, thank you so much for the hearts. I appreciate that. And then Love You More. If you want to know that you're not alone, that this happened to somebody else, or if you just want a good read, I wrote it like a true crime novel, so it's a fast, intense read. Please, I know you're going to yell at me in the book, like, can't you see he doesn't love you? Can't you see he's not going to change? But I have a feeling that if you've been in a toxic relationship, you can really relate and know that you're not alone. So those are the books that I have. So I'm going to start reading your questions, guys. I know that you've been really active. So Phantasmic Ether says, my mom always told me to go into a relationship assuming other people were good and that they should be good and they're supposed to care, and that we don't conceive people can be cruel or heartless. Yeah, that's really hard. That's a cooperative worldview. So she's kind of going in and asking you to do what's called blind trust. That's what's called blind trust. It's very dangerous, actually, blindly trusting. The first book that you asked about, and I saw the name in it. Yeah, Glass Nails. The first book's called First Steps to Leaving a Narcissist. If you go into my TikTok shop, you'll see all of these books listed. This one helps you break through the confusion. So if you're really struggling to know what's true, you're like, I know that they say they love me, but then they treat me so horribly or call me names or run me down. So is that love or is that not love? And why does it feel like it's not love, but I love them? And then they turn around and tell me that they love me and they've never worked. Mine would say, I've never worked so hard for this relationship while he's cheating. That's not love, by the way. So, but that's what I needed. I needed that book. So I wrote that book for the me that was in that relationship and couldn't figure this out. Yeah, so Christian, your mom's did the same thing. Your mom did the same thing as Phantasmic, saying that you should give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Mine did too, honestly. I heard that a lot as well. And I understand the mindset. I wish we did live in a world where that was true. I actually do wish that was true. The problem is that it's not. I got the chance to interview, by the way, this is another benefit to my club, Toxic Free Relationship Club. For $75 a month, you also get access to the webinars, which I normally charge $30 for. And one of them I got to interview was Sandra Brown. So Sandra Brown did this massive study out of Purdue University, and she also wrote the book, The Women Who Love Psychopaths. So she looked at 600 couples, pathological love relationships, and she found that 2/3 of the people who get into these relationships actually are very cooperative, which is what I've been talking about, and they're also very conscientious. And I asked her before the interview, so what percentage of the world's actually predatory? Because that's the group she's worked a lot with. She used to run support groups for psychopaths and sociopaths. I think she was in the prison system. So, can you imagine, working with this population? What group she said was the creepiest group that made that literally, she said the hair would go up on the back of her neck when she would do group therapy with this group. You guys probably won't guess. It was the female prisoners were the group that freaked her out the most. She said that group was scary. She worked with both men and women, but she found the women were really scary. I thought that was fascinating. So I asked her, what percentage of the world is dangerous, is predatory? Because her emphasis in that webinar was, we need better education at helping understand what predation looks like, understanding what aggression looks like particularly covert aggression. If you never heard of that term, that comes out of George Simon's work in Sheep's Clothing, Covert Aggression. She said 20%. 20%. That means 1 out of 5 people that you're meeting in the world, I'm thinking back to you, Fantasmic Mom's advice, 1 out of 5 people are dangerous, predatory. And they don't have your best interest at heart at all. They're actually, you need to be careful. So I don't really like doing this, but I now walk through the world, and when I usually think everybody's good, the world's a really good place, everybody means well for me, everybody's thinking positively towards me, which, by the way, as a psychologist, you get the privilege of knowing what people are really thinking. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about themselves. Everybody is very preoccupied with themselves. But yeah, 1 out of 5. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Marley. Not sociopaths or psychopaths. 1 out of 5 are predatory, exploitive or predatory. That includes the narcissistic group. Yeah, that was shocking to me. So it's changed the way in which I move through the world. I am not so likely to give people benefits of the doubt. I'm not. I need to have you show me that you're worthy of my trust. That's called earned trust. Yeah. It's hard. It is a scary statistic, but you're right. He says it doesn't surprise you as you get older. Do they know that they're like that? No. I mean, that's back to, I don't know how much JJ you caught in my earlier part, because I always take a half an hour and just do a kind of a lecture. But today I was lecturing about the fact that the people who are more competitive, who have a competitive worldview, they don't know that that's predatory, that being competitive is a predatory mindset, because you're wanting to get ahead. You want the advantage off of somebody else. I know that kind of feels mean, because we move into sports and think, well, shouldn't we want to win? Shouldn't our group should be the best? Yeah, but you're also competing against each other. I mean, so it's very hard to move out of that mindset. Natasha said, I had a similar experience of getting accused and constantly put into the spot of explaining myself. I kept thinking he's insecure and just needed reassurance. Before I knew it, I was interjected. Yeah, exactly. That's fascinating that you say that. That is what happens. That's the process, is that we end up thinking if we just sort of can somehow change this, that we can make this different, that they'll get better. The problem is they don't, and we just get manipulated. Yeah. So Mariel said, I feel like I get jaded after being screwed over for too many times. So part of the challenge for all of us is, and this is the challenge that I'm putting out for myself, is that how do I walk through, back to this question that Dr. Brene Brown asks in her book, how do we walk through the world in a wholehearted, vulnerable way, but carefully, so that we don't allow people who are truly predatory take advantage of us? I think that becomes the very bigger issue, is how do you do that in a way that's wise and but yet also vulnerable. And to me, it comes this is one of the key pieces, and this is what we're going to be working on in these retreats. That's why the retreats are so powerful, because you get to do it in person for 4 days, is that how to, again, to trust yourself. one of the first things that toxic people do is they say to us, stop trusting yourself. Stop listening to your intuition. Stop listening to your gut. Stop listening to your feelings. They want you to shut all that off so that they get to define the reality as they see it, which is then ends up being they gaslight you. No, I didn't do that. You're just too sensitive. That's why it upset you. No, I wasn't out cheating. I was really out. I was out doing work, even though work is closed and nobody's at the office. I'm thinking of Reese's Pieces. Thank you so much, guys, for that gift. Reese's Pieces story about how she stops by and finds out the place is closed. He couldn't have been there. It's impossible. So, they say these things, and what they're basically saying is that you should not trust yourself. But the very time that you do that, then you've just lost your best tool. Your best tool is yourself. I was listening to, I know I've mentioned this book, so if you guys you followed me for very long, you know how much positively I think about this guy, is Gavin DeBecker wrote the book, The Gift of Fear. And I just listened to it on audiobook, and it's an amazing book. I highly recommend it. Cannot say enough of it. But one of the things he says is you are better at detecting danger than the most apex predator in the world. You're better than the leopard. You're better than the jaguar. You're better than you name an animal that you think is an apex predator. You're better at that. He says all the time you make rapid decisions on very little information about, like on the road. You can detect, like today, I was driving and someone moved a little too close to me. And I felt it. I felt them moving into my space, and I was ready to move so that I could move my car out of the way. How did I do that? Because I am that good at picking up danger. So if we get back to learning to listen to ourselves, really listen to our gut, listen to our feelings, you can get very good at when knowing somebody is making you uncomfortable. I had an example of that just recently where I had met this guy 4 times on 4 different dates. I'm about ready to post this video. I haven't posted it. I met this guy over 4 dates, and every time I'd walk away and say no, I'd say no, there's something wrong here. I didn't know exactly what, and then I distrusted myself so much so that I agreed to go out a few times with him, and he continued to show me that it was a no, that this was not a safe guy. So just recently, because after all of this happened, I blocked him because the guy wouldn't stop. He just it was like a bad penny keep turning up. So I finally just blocked him. A year after I block him, he gets a hold of me and says, I'm disappointed in you in blocking me. Okay. Oh, wow. I'm so upset. You're disappointed. I hold you in high esteem. I don't know why you would do that. I can't believe it. So I write him normally I'm not a blunt person. I don't like hurting people's feelings, but I write this very blunt letter, and I list his behaviors. You did this. You hurt this person in the restaurant that was offensive. You pushed me on this. You did this to me. These are the things that you've done wrong. And I said, that's why I blocked you. Won't take my no. And that's why I blocked you. And I said, the way for you to respect me is don't ever contact me again. Because he said, I respect you. If you want to respect me, don't ever contact me again. Okay. And he writes, fair enough, bye. So do you know what he just did 2 weeks ago? He emails me again. The same method that he had gotten a hold of me, because despite being blocked, because I didn't have his Facebook. It was on Facebook. I didn't have his Facebook. He emails me again and sends me this new paragraph about how he holds me in high esteem. Okay, so the old me, the me that kind of sees the world cooperatively and everybody means well and all of that, I would have thought, oh, he had a change of heart. He thinks so highly of me. No. The new me that understands the predatory behavior knows that he didn't see me. I wasn't really a person to him. All that he wants is he got in the space where he felt lonely or horny or something, and he decided to reach out again. It was all about him. It's always been all about him. This is a guy that doesn't see me. And he proved it by saying, I said, respect me, then respect my block. And he didn't, because they always will push. But see, when we have this cooperative worldview and we fail to see that there are other people who have different mindsets than us, then we don't see that, and we mistake in that, and we interpret it through our grid. And our grid is because we're well-intended, we then interpret it as meaning something that it doesn't mean. Doesn't mean. Yeah, exactly. Boundaries don't matter with this individual. They are absolutely mind-blowing. But it's so important that we get better. There was something bothered me. Every time I was around this guy, there's something bothered me. I needed to learn to listen to that. How many times have you met a seemingly nice person, nice woman, nice man, attractive, well-dressed, seems, having it together, and yet something was off and you can't put your finger on it, and then you walked away and thought maybe you're being too hard on them? I know I do that all the time. And yet I should not do that, because I have found every single time I've thought that and I tested it, I was always right. There is something wrong. I end up finding something out about this person that was just devastating, just like horrific. I remember even with my ex, it was as early when I was dating my ex, I was in the car. He took a phone call in front of me, and I know I talk about this in the book. I think I talk about, maybe I do, I don't know. I don't remember I talk about it in the book. But so if Love You More is where I share what happened in that relationship. But I remember thinking in the book, he knows her. He's dated her. They've been intimate. I remember thinking that. And he were having this conversation in front of me. And later he said, like, yeah, she likes me and she's wanted to go out, but it's over. I know that we're not a thing. And she knows that too. Do you know what I found out later? That while we were dating, they were intimately involved with each other. That he was actively cheating on me with that relationship. I was exactly right. I did cover it in my book. I was exactly right. What I thought was happening was actually happening. I found proof of it. That he and her, while in that time frame, were exactly involved with each other. Yeah, it is the same old shit. Exactly. It's so if we get better, every time your gut goes off, like, let me ask you a poll. Let's poll everybody here right now. How many of you have come across somebody or something that you thought that your gut, whatever it warned you about, was unreasonably, like, it was being unreasonable, that it was just like being too harsh, or that person was much nicer than that, and you just sort of dismissed it? How many of us done that? If you have, put a 1 in the comments. How many times? Yep. How many of it exactly? How many of us done that? And yet, how many times have you ever had the chance to have it come back and you to confirm it? Yeah, all the ones are coming in, and you confirm it and you find out that you were right, that you were exactly right about that person. That whatever it was you sensed, you were dead on about it. Yeah, I think everybody. I used to think only women were socialized to, like, not feel, but men are too. Men and women are both socialized not to have feelings, not to be harsh, and not to be so quick to judge, and not, and then what happens is that we end up being really, really harmed, very harmed. Yeah, so Natasha says, I'm low key afraid of any person who does not stop after I tell them that I don't wish to talk to them anymore. Exactly. That's exactly the point. So, yeah, what are you struggling with? Right. I'd be happy to, like, take any questions you guys have right now. So, what are you struggling with that you'd like to talk about? I've got about another 12 minutes here today before I got to wrap it up. Is there something that's really pressing you? Lando, I know you've been talking to Leslie and Kate and Kim and a lot of others here today. Is there something that co-parenting with a narcissist? Ooh, that's tough. That's your issue. You're struggling to co-parent with a narcissist. They don't co-parent well, and they don't co-parent actually at all. You're going to be more like parallel parenting with them. Can't hardly say that. Parallel parenting with them. Are abusers usually that way in every relationship? Absolutely, because it's their worldview. That's who. So a personality, what that means is that's how you are in relationship all the time. You see the world that way and you treat other people that way. So yeah, you're consistently that way. Now, in the beginning, when they're trying to woo someone over, and it could be they love bomb coworkers and employers and neighbors and friends. They don't just love bomb romantic relationships. They love bomb, even maybe when they met your parents, before they got in a relationship with you, that they certainly will put on their best foot, and they know how to, like, pull it together and make good impressions. They're fantastic at making very good first impressions. But underneath it all, if you learn to listen and watch, you'll still see the narcissistic traits are present underneath of all of that. What attachment styles do narcissists tend to have? Well, narcissists tend to have, they seem avoidant. They probably, some of them have disorganized as well, but But they can have any attachment style except for secure. They're not securely attached because they don't attach to anyone securely. So I wouldn't say, oh, they're all avoidant just because they do that hot cold thing. That makes us think, oh, they're just afraid of being vulnerable. No, they do the hot cold thing because they're exploitive, because they know that's a great way to making you need them more than they need you. So it's a way to bond you to them, to connect you to them, is to show up and disappear and show up and disappear, to act like they're super present and then not be there at all. That often a lot of them know what they're doing, and they know that it really has a very, it builds rapport and builds intensity super fast. But yeah, but that's not a sign of avoidant just because they do that. That's just sign of manipulation. But so I would say I've met narcissists who are anxiously attached, and I've certainly met narcissists who have a lot of disorganized attachment or anxiously ambivalent, and I also have seen people who are very much avoidant. So, so Brenda said, I'm struggling with my adult children who are still supporting their abusive, covert, narcissistic dad. That's tough. Covert narcissists are really a tough group. They're a very hidden group. We have a hard time seeing them because they play the victim card. So they come across sympathetic. And I know this is what I assumed I did, and I assume that many of you do it too, is that when we see sympathy, like, oh, poor me, it's not going great, we assume then that we've met somebody who has empathy because they're looking for sympathy. We think they're empathic when they're not. I one time was developing an online friendship with a guy who seemed very sympathetic, shared a lot about the hardships in his life. He seemed to show up, and then I actually got to talk to him and call him. And this guy talked for 45 minutes nonstop without a breath. I mean, he didn't even allow me to get a word in edgewise. And anything I brought up, he one-upped. He would always have a bigger, worse situation. So you watch out for that. It's very hard. But here's the other terrible rule about children. Children know instinctively, at an unconscious level, which parent is more fragile, which parent is more likely to abandon and disappear and forget them, or is really needy, or has some underlying issues that make them feel shaky, that the connection is shaky. And they will then gravitate towards protecting that relationship, protecting that connection over the more secure parent. It's a rough rule, very rough rule, which means that if you're the more secure parent, your children are going to be more blunt, honest, and less likely to be protective of the relationship with you. And if that other parent puts them in a spot of having to choose, whether consciously or unconsciously, which parent they prefer more, they're going to choose the more dysfunctional parent because they can't bear to lose the connection. I actually was primarily trained as a child psychologist. My earliest experiences were teenagers. I worked at a psychiatric hospital with kids. I worked a lot with kids. I just found that I didn't care for the work. It was very exhausting, and it made me feel very blue, very depressed. So that's why I stopped working. But that was a rule that I saw over and over happen. I would see the most dysfunctional parents who really harmed these kids, and that these kids would just hang on contact with them. Really, really hang. Hey, so great to hang out with you too, Kerry. I always love that name. Such a beautiful name. So thanks for being here today. But the sad thing is that they would then rather trash the relationship with you because you're more secure. They know you're not going to go anywhere. So what can you do for that? I mean, some of you are asking, well, what then I do if that's my situation? Hang close, stay present, stay available. Don't put them in the position of choosing. Don't put them in the position of defending. It is such hard work. You have to be so much bigger, stronger, and secure around this. Chances are, if you do, eventually the narcissist's behavior, most of the time, not always, I can't promise this, but he or she will do something that harms them, and then they'll begin to come to you to talk to you about it. But even then, don't run that other parent down. Don't make them feel like they have to choose because they have to choose in the way that they feel about this other person. So be very, very careful about that. If you can do that, that will be helpful. You just stay present, emotionally available. I know it's tough work. I know it's really tough work. Yeah. Yeah. Lisa Sunny, Stronger Than Before, talks a lot about this. Roller Coaster of Love does some talk about it. I think also Family Court Corner with Angela is an also very fantastic source for a lot of help as well. Yeah, there is a risk. There is narcissism, they think is partly genetic, that there's a predisposition for it to run in families. So there's a chance just because you have children with a narcissist, one of them or some of them may be narcissistic. It's not a huge, I have a feeling it's like less than 1 out of 10 is the risk, but it's still a slight risk. Also, the other problem though is that if you think about it, the narcissist is powerful and they carry a lot of weight, and for some children who are more vulnerable to power in the world and how things work that way, they're going to want to emulate the more powerful parent, even though technically it's not really actually power, it's exploitation, but it can feel that way to somebody who doesn't really understand that that's not a very functional way. So I say sometimes children mimic that as a way to defend against it. For example, my ex, he hated his father, hated him. Couldn't say a good word about the man. The man was a brutal guy. I never got to meet him. He was deceased when I came on the picture. And yet I have a feeling my ex was just like him. I have a feeling that if I got to meet them, I would say, oh, yep, 2 peas in a pod. That the apple didn't fall very far from the tree. So as much as he despised this person, he became this person as a way, I think, to protect himself from his father's abuse. Partly, it's what I think. It was a way he just thought, hey, it works for him. He got what he wanted. He got ahead, and then he just really he began to master it, work at it. Great questions, guys. I really appreciate this. I have about 4 more minutes. Any other questions you guys want to ask me? These are big, tough topics to talk about. Any tips for marriage counseling with a counselor who doesn't believe in titles and doesn't want me to either commission like titles about what? What titles does your counselor not believe in? Like narcissism? Are all physically abusive men narcissistic? That's an interesting question. Lundy Bancroft would say no, only 50% would actually qualify for a mental health condition. That unfortunately abuse tends to be something that's modeled. That's what he claims. It's modeled. But I feel like I don't know. The stats don't quite sit right with me. Because if you think about, this is why I'm trying to think about why it does not sit well with me. The idea that I can lay hands on another person, that I have, that other person doesn't have the same rights as I do, and doesn't have autonomy, that I don't respect their autonomy and their individuality, to me that's very narcissistic. So I feel like that's are they fully a narcissist? I don't know. I can't say that, but it just feels awfully superior, entitled, and privileged to me. Yeah. Oh, and yeah, I don't know what to say to you about that. I guess to me, Commission would come back to, do they though believe enough in understanding how behavior affects the relationship's trust and vulnerability? That to me would be more important. If not, then I would be concerned about whether or not you're going to get very far in that treatment. That would be, something to be thinking about. Any advice on how to heal past abusive relationships and thoughts of dating? That's tough. I know I've ventured into the dating pool. And it really comes back to, and this is why, one thing you might want to think about, Marley, is, I know you may have already said this, but I would love to have you join one of my groups so you can talk about it and talk through it. But it's really learning to trust yourself and learning to recognize your feelings, what you're feeling and why you're feeling, so that you're not triggered so fast and rapidly, that you can differentiate between an insecurity based upon a past narcissistic relationship versus what's really actually a risk. Sometimes we miss risks when we shouldn't because we don't trust ourselves enough. And other times we see everything as a risk and it's not. So it's really kind of learning how to listen better to ourselves in the moment. Yeah, I hope that helps, Kamish. That was a fast, rapid answer, but I hope that gives you some help in that situation. I feel like my anxiety is evolved so rapidly that it's now physically painful and paralyzing. His chronic infidelity has and so much betrayal, it feels really hard to face now. Is that normal? I think sometimes when we really get into healing and start to like get in touch with our feelings again, at first it's almost like it's like a dam, we turn the water on and this buildup that everything's built behind it, and it can feel like it's rushing forward super fast and be overwhelming. So yeah, I have a feeling it can be really intense in the beginning. Um, and I find, here's another interesting thing I found as I'm letting myself feel more feelings too, is that some of it is really uncomfortable, that I don't really know how to be vulnerable with some emotional states. I feel very like exposed. Like, believe it or not, one of the more uncomfortable emotional states for me is joy. I don't, I have a hard time being happy and joyful in front of people. I just find it uncomfortable. Kind of, yeah. Um, Anger is another really big hard one. It's scary, and that's more obvious reasons. But yeah, when you start to like really let that, I had a moment with a friend where her and I were hanging out, and she played a song, and I just broke, and it kind of like all this feeling and it was very uncomfortable. So yeah, I think that's kind of a normal thing that happens. All right, I'm going to take a couple more questions. What if he never cheats? Tammy, it's so good to see you back. I always love it when you join. What about if he never cheats? That doesn't mean somebody's not toxic just because they don't cheat on you. Yeah, winner, it is really easy where we get careful around feeling joy in front of narcissists because they do punish us for all these feelings. Yeah, it's interesting. You're going to ask about joy. You get depressed when you feel a second of joy. Have you ever listened to what the depression is saying? What if it could speak, what words it would say? That's a question you could ask yourself. Are narcissists more prone to adapt to societal prejudices like racism, casteism, and patriarchy? I think so because they're exploitive. They'll use anything to their advantage. So if it works to their advantage, they would utilize it and pick it up. But I also think they've created a lot of it because it benefits them. So, oh, that's interesting. TikTok's making me verify. That's funny. And I've never seen that before. All right, you guys, I need to wrap it up. I'm hopping over to my Toxic Free Relationship Club. I would love to have you guys join me. Brenda, you asked me where to get my books. Why don't you direct message me on Facebook and I can tell you where to get them? And that would be really easy. So you guys are always so amazing to hang out. I love all the questions. And I'm here every Tuesday. I'll be back here next week at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Next week's topic is going to be about why we think we're the problem, why we often think we're the narcissist. So if you want to join me on looking at more about what narcissistic personality disorder is, it's been a long time since I've really like buckled down and talked about what is it. So if you'd like to join me in looking at that, I would be happy to have you back here next Tuesday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. All right, you guys have a good rest of the week, and I'll see you back here next week.